Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, I am your host, Stefan Burns, geophysicist, and today we're going to talk about these highly unusual, very rare energy signals because these are not common, and this is probably the strongest burst of energy that we've seen like this in a very long time, at least as long as I've been tracking this. This is definitely the most potent display of these sort of signals, and they are linked very closely to earthquakes. Not always guaranteed, but more often than not, as long-term viewers on this channel will know, when we see signals like this in our background electromagnetic field, we often get a high magnitude earthquake in just a few days. We saw signals like this back about 2 years ago exactly with the full moon, and they occurred 4 days before, and they also occurred during the magnitude 7.8 earthquake in Turkey that also had that magnitude 7.5 just basically at the same time. So that double earthquake sequence that occurred in Turkey, the strongest earthquakes that we've had on this planet since, basically, we saw signals very similar to this show up in the background electromagnetic field. Now, we just did about 24 hours ago, a little bit more than that, had that magnitude 7.6 earthquake in the Caribbean, right off of the Cayman Islands to the southwest. And so that's a very powerful earthquake, one of the strongest that we've had in that time period, perhaps the second strongest. But we are seeing these signals here out of Cumiana, Italy. There is a open observatory there where they post this data. This is vertical electric field data. And we are looking from 0 to 105 hertz. And here we see our Schumann resonances. So we see the first mode, second mode, third mode, 4, 5. It kind of bleeds and upwards as you go and the strength reduces. But these are Earth's naturally resonant energy fields. And these are very interesting because they are really increasing the power density of the background electric field above the Schumann resonances. So normally you see here, this is like normal quiet conditions, no active weather storms or anything in Cumiana. We see that there is, pretty low power signal here denoted by blue. And then we see all of a sudden this shift at about 18, that's 1600, so about 1700 UTC right here on the 9th of February. Now in Universal Time, it's the 10th. It's still the 9th of February where I am in California. But right here, about 1700 Universal Time, we see all of a sudden these signals appear. And then they really went through a big burst right here at about 1800 UTC, which is weakly correlated with the increased geomagnetic activity that we had. But this is not common. This is not a geomagnetic artifact from the increase in the solar wind, because we don't see, we get those sort of solar wind barrages all the time, and we don't see these signals every day. These are very, very rare. And actually, I can pull up really quickly the data from 2 years ago, because that's very relevant right now. And to give you some context, because that preceded by 4 days the magnitude 7.8 earthquake in Turkey. And back then, when I saw them, I didn't exactly know what they were. So I was looking at them, and I think I may have even made a video on them, but I saved the data though. I definitely saved the data because I track all this stuff. I save it all. And then we had that earthquake and it all clicked into place because I had done some research just recently actually as to these sort of signals and what they entail as it relates to earthquakes. So here we can switch over to our latest imagery here, and I just want to quickly check the stream health to make sure everything looks good with the stream. Everything looks great. Thank you all so much for being here. Welcome. I hope you've had a great Sunday. I know it's late, and maybe though if you're in Europe or in Asia, it may be early for you, so welcome. Hope you're all doing well. Okay, so these are often warning signals for big earthquakes. So this is not an alert for like the entire earth about to explode or something, okay? Let's just be very clear about that. But this is a cautionary warning signal for there to be perhaps a high magnitude earthquake imminently within days. And we've had that now kind of click in place 2 times. This is the first example back in 2023, I believe. Is that 2023? Yeah, 2023, back in February. And then also just recently with the magnitude 7 off the coast of Ferndale, we had some pre-earthquake signals also show up in the Schumann resonances about 5 days before I made a video on that, made that Earth Alert video, and lo and behold, magnitude 7 earthquake just a few days later. So this is what we saw on the 4th of, this is what we saw on the 2nd of February back in 2023, these parabolas. Notice the shape there. These long energy streams. The time duration there is what? More than 5, like 8 hours? No, yeah, 7 hours or so. Long duration bursts of energy across multiple parts of the spectrum. This is 0 hertz going to 40, and so we see these kind of going down through the frequency range, or rather going up in frequency. Then here is the earthquake. Magnitude 7.8 ruptured. I have the exact time right there. I put that dot there just to show how that energy signal basically appeared the moment of that earthquake. This is all data collected in Tomsk, Russia, about 4,000 kilometers away from the epicenter of those two earthquakes. But still, we observed this massive energy stream. And in fact, I came down with like a very sudden, I had like flu-like symptoms when I was in Egypt when that happened, and they resolved the moment the earthquake went away. So like right in this time period here, it was nighttime for us because you see the time there, it was morning, right? Right at that time period was when I was feeling feverish. And then that earthquake occurred. I didn't know it had occurred yet, but then I started to feel better. And then I found out about the earthquake. I was like, oh, wow, okay. So these things can influence our health and wellness too. So it's not just a geo warning in terms of a potential earthquake. It's also a sign that, hey, there could just be, because of the enhanced energy in these background fields, which we are biologically connected to, there perhaps could be an increase in health symptoms. So be mindful of that. Make sure you take good care of yourself. Drink good water. You know, grounding and earthing is the best thing you can do to balance and harmonize your biorhythms at this moment in time, your bioelectricity. You know, eat good, clean, simple foods. Some viewers who know potatoes, potatoes, potatoes. I love potatoes. They are the OP food. So eat your potatoes, you know, mash them, boil them, stick them in stew. And also good air, good clean air, some light exercise, rest when you need to. Those are all recommendations. But let us go back to our data here and actually zoom out of this graphic because we can see a little bit more. This is two different data sets. We have 0 through 105 hertz with this bottom one here, which is showing these signals. And then we also have 0 to 15,000 hertz up top. Both of them vertical electric field data. This guy, Renato is his name. He runs VLF.IT. He has this long wire stretched out in his backyard. And that is able to capture these signals that exist vibrating in the vertical electric field, which is running up from the ground surface to the ionosphere. And so you're really measuring the subtle vibrations of the global electric circuit as a result. And ideally, we'd have these observation stations all across the world, you know, and they would all be working together. But we don't have that yet. There are independent groups and organizations and universities and government, whatever, but they don't really work together. So he has his own setup. He also monitors a few other places in Italy. So these signals right here perhaps are related to some imminent Earth event in Italy or maybe perhaps in Greece. That's what I'm looking at with that seismic swarm. It could also be further afield, as we saw with the last data set. You know, they picked up those signals 4,000 kilometers away. And in fact, we didn't really pick those signals up in Italy. So there is sometimes bias, it seems, where they pop up in some areas, but they don't pop up in others. That's why you need high density observation stations around the globe. That's something that with my life journey, I hope to do. But we see them right here. And yeah, you can go to VLF.IT actually, but this data has kind of already left their website. So I was lucky to catch it when it happened, and shout out to the person on Twitter who posted this half of the data. They were the only one that posted that data. I caught it from this point over. I only saw this at the beginning, and I thought that was weird. And then I saw the fact that they posted that. I was like, whoa, what is happening? So But up top, we have a kind of a wider view of the background vertical electric field. This is from 0 to 1500 hertz, and then we have 0 to 15,000 hertz. And you'll actually notice these signals there at the bottom, though again, it's much condensed. So we see them showing up in this wider view. And the reason I included this is so we can see that, A, because we can get a sense of their kind of broader structure. This is going off the chart at 105 hertz. And B, so we can see that in general, right now, the background field, just the energetic field out of Cumiana, Italy, is very, very quiet. Because often what we see, often what we see with people reporting on this is that there's a thunderstorm that rolls overhead, which supercharges the background electric field, and you get these big spikes, these big red spikes across the data, and people are, saying crazy signal or something appears like massive Schumann burst, but it's really just a thunderstorm over that area, and it's not indicative of a global event. But here we can very clearly see that weather conditions are super calm and quiet right now, which is perfect for observing these sort of signals. Of course, it doesn't happen every day. It happens very rarely. But lo and behold, we got them. You'll see also that they're not super high in their decibel count. They're not way up there in the red. They are a subtle power increase, but still noticeable. And so this really is not weather related. This is some sort of earth energy signal being emitted from the ground, A, or B, it's some signal created from like a big ionospheric disturbance, because that's the other part of the circuit, or those two things are connected. But if you read the research on pre-earthquake signals in these parts of the light spectrum, about 0 to, in this case, 200-300 hertz, sometimes they can go higher in frequency as well. We observed that they precede earthquakes. They can happen during earthquakes, even happen sometimes afterwards, but typically they precede them. And they and they don't really have a super definitive characteristic every single time. They're always a little bit different, but they can come out of the ground. They can also be created by ionospheric disturbances. And one method of action for this is that you actually have these electric currents that are propagating deep underground, these telluric currents, and their frequency of oscillation generates these sort of waves, which then broadcast up, and then they're able to make it through the rock without attenuating, right, getting absorbed into the rock. They're able to make it out of the rock and reach the surface and then be observed. And so we don't see these signals often from earthquakes that occur under the ocean, because the ocean will absorb them. Though that's not always the case. We do, in some shallow areas, we will observe these signals beforehand. Not every earthquake or event. You could say perhaps we can add volcanic events to this. But they've definitely been connected to earthquakes. Not every earthquake produces these signals. Or if they do, they're not observable every time or measurable, because first off, the depth of that electric current generating this disturbance is variable. The deeper it is, the more rock it has to pass through to reach the surface and be observable as a signal above background noise levels. That's important. B, the frequency also determines whether it's observable. So the lower the frequency of the signal, the more likely it is to reach the surface, because it's having less interactions with every single pulse. So you go from 10 hertz to 100 hertz, well, you're cycling much more often, you're more likely to get absorbed. And so the higher the frequency of the signal, the more likely it's going to absorb into the rock, and therefore you'll need to go shallower in depth, closer to the surface for that signal to reach the surface, or the signal needs to be more powerful to overcome that attenuation. So that's the general equation. The strength of the signal at depth, under the surface, this electric current or the changing magnetic field, the depth of where that's occurring, and then also the frequency of the energy itself. So this is notable because, again, it is higher in frequency than these Schumann resonances. We see a few pulses there kind of dipping into it. I can punch back in again to make this really nice and clear for you all. And so we see some of them actually piercing into the Schumann resonances. This is 7.8 hertz on average, so about 8 hertz, let's just say, for mode 1. Mode 2 there is 14. Mode 3 is 20. And then we have mode 4, 5, and 6. That's Mode 4 is 25 hertz, mode 5 is 33, mode 6 is 39. That is also the specific frequency range that we see for these earthquake signals, from 20 to 35 hertz or so. And so we see that at the beginning, and then they actually went even higher frequency, which is very interesting. So we do see them kind of piercing down at times into that frequency range. And we see that it wasn't just this, right? There were some tail signals as well. Very bizarre. We see them lined up perfectly there. But this is just the most obvious burst. Again, that's right there at 1800 Universal Time, February 9th. So if you're keeping track of yourself or perhaps other things, that's a specific timestamp that you want. We also, though, are seeing this in other places to some degree, slightly different. Let's check it out. We have, not that. We have also our data out of Tomsk, Russia. This is collected by the Space Observing System there, and that is the URL that you can go to right there. I've laid in this data for this time. I had to kind of stretch and distort it in Photoshop, but just so you can see where that is, and also gives you a sense of, we saw just on the last slide how that data looked and had those parabolas. Let me go back really quick. We saw that had those parabolas, which is a very clear sign and characteristic of those pre-earthquake signals, is that they have this parabola shape. So we're seeing that here. And this is the time scale is nice and stretched out, so we can see it very easily. With the data out of Tomsk, with the data out of With the data out of Tomsk, it's 3 entire days for this data set. So everything kind of gets crunched down, which makes it a little harder to read at times. So you can see the relative scaling there for perspective. But here we see that the Schumann resonances have started to pick up out of Tomsk, Russia. And the weather right now is cloudy. So cloudy weather will kind of, in general, subtly enhance the global electric circuit because the clouds there have an electric charge. And it looks like there's a little bit of wind noise in this data, which is known as microphonics. And so we don't have the perfectly clear data set like we do out of Cumiana, Italy with our Tomsk data. But I think that we're seeing similar things at play right now because we see this increase in high frequency signals and we're seeing this increase in high frequency signals there. This part of the Schumann data is higher frequency. It's flipped. So this is 0 to 40 hertz. Whereas here it's 0 to 105 hertz. But we see the before, nice and quiet, and then we start to see things increase. And in fact, with our data out of Tomsk, we see some weird signals as well, though they're in the lower frequency range. So like, for example, I'm not putting too much weight on this, but that's kind of a weird signal. You don't see that every day. And we've been seeing some weird signals, in fact, in the Schumann resonances of Tomsk for a while now. Here's another one. If you look closely, you'll kind of see a weird shape right there, right? So if you know how to read this stuff, you can see these things pop out. It's not just the obvious, for example, these lines cutting across where the power is increasing that catches my attention. Also little bursts like that are isolated are weird. But really it's the data out of Canada it's the data out of Cumiana that I'm looking at very, very closely. And so the question is, where could that earthquake occur? If this is a pre-earthquake signal, and that's something that is going to occur, when and where? Well, let us talk about that. Because we have our sun and we have this seismic swarm in Greece. So we're going to talk about them at the same time. Okay. Let us start actually with the seismic swarm in Greece. This started on the 28th of January with the new moon. I've been making a lot of videos on that. I'm sure most of you have watched them. We see that on the 1st of February, it really exploded and we've had it basically going nonstop since. We had a magnitude 5.2 today. I'll probably release an update on this tomorrow. But there's one area right now of super seismic activity, and that's Greece, right next to this, Santorini. And this is a very deadly volcanic field. And we have the full moon coming up, which is going to increase the tidal forces. And we see there's, in general, the highest magnitude earthquakes typically occur during peak tidal force. And if tidal forces are stronger because of new moon or full moon, then that probability increases. So if this is a tectonic foreshock, the entire swarm collectively is a foreshock event for something bigger, like the magnitude 7.8 that occurred right about here in 1956, then perhaps this signal out of Italy, which is close by, is an earthquake precursor for that. So everything's kind of lining up. It's feeling very reminiscent to 2 years ago when we had those pre-earthquake signals out of Russia, and then 4 days later we had the earthquake in Turkey, and that was with the same full moon. That's with the snow moon. That's in February. Or if you use Western tropical astrology, it's the Leo full moon. But they're both in roughly the same part of the sky from 2 years ago and also to now. So that is active, and a little bit of spidey sense kicking in. Here's our sun, and we see that we have these coronal holes on the sun. And actually, we even have one in the polar region there, which is quite odd. But these are loading the Earth with energy. They have been loading the Earth with energy, and they will continue to load the Earth with energy as this one now has expanded quite a lot and is now starting to rotate into view. When this coronal hole has been here before. It was there on the last rotation, and so this coronal hole was there about the same size, but this one was just like a finger. It was very thin. Look at how much it's widened and expanded though since then, and also this new kind of weak coronal hole, but still it's there, has now also opened up in the polar region. That is bizarre. You typically only see that during solar minimum. So we are in solar maximum. Sunspot numbers are fairly high, though we have this group now rotating out. Big sunspot about to rotate in. We can actually give that a look because we see that on our gong data. And so someone mentioned that we should look at that. Let us look at that because we have some triggers coming up. That's the point. We have these pre-earthquake signals right now that are showing up very strongly. And we also have the triggers, for example, solar activity, the moon. Here is our far side map of the sun. They use helioseismic, they measure the vibrations. And so we see what's on the Earth side. We have these sunspots rotating out. We have some other sunspots there that are nicely imaged. We saw that with that data, that imagery we just looked at. Look at that monster about to rotate in. Very, very, very big. They have another view of it down here too, you can see. And so we have this really big sunspot about to rotate in because these two right here are about exactly 180 degrees apart. So as one big sunspot group rotates out, this new one's going to rotate in. And in fact, we've been having increased geomagnetic activity over the past about 12 hours now because we had some solar wind come in. So here we can look at our real-time solar wind. It's just now cooled off, but we're still seeing our geomagnetic activity increase. It looks like we just got a new KP value. But we see that there was a slow ramp up back here on the 7th, basically the 8th. Right there on the 8th, we started to get solar wind to increase. We started to have the southward component go negative, connecting the Earth's magnetic field very easily. Solar wind velocity went up, temperature went up, plasma density definitely went up. Look at this. We have values over 30 right here. And then we see solar wind really start to get strong. This black line denotes the total field strength. And so it went all the way up to 23 right here. And then we had some pretty big buckets of southward component, as I call them. That's 13 for the total, negative 11. Or if we even go, I think I can zoom in on this specifically. We had some pretty big buckets. For example, right here, 18 for the total, negative 14 for the southward component. And so this has triggered a geomagnetic storm. It has been just under G1 conditions. We can look at that with our current KP index here. Let's check it out. But this is also adding to the energy of our system. We're seeing these pre-earthquake signals. We have a record-breaking seismic swarm off the coast of a known volcano in Greece, Santorini, a very deadly volcano. This is all happening in a volcanic field. We just had a magnitude 7.6 earthquake, and we just had Mercury Kazemi. We'll check that out. But things are really, really accelerating very quickly right now. So here is our KP index right here. And we can scroll up. We see our latest values. We had a 4, then a 4.67, 4.33, 4.67. So not a big geomagnetic storm, just right below G1 conditions, but definitely enhanced activity. Now that solar wind has just cooled off, as we saw. So it looks like that's the pulse that we received, but we received that when this rare earth energy appeared. So that's notable. I think it's also very notable that it appeared while we had Mercury go Kazemi. So we can check that out. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of the live stream, I woke up exactly on the dot with Mercury cazimi right after a very vivid, powerful, meaningful dream. So Mercury, the messenger and the magician, they're meeting the sun, which is representative of consciousness. You know, you can't make this stuff up. That's why it works, and millions of people study this. So to any of the non-believers, I just recommend you study it. Just earnestly study it. But there is the planet Mercury in superior conjunction to the sun, denoted by this white circle right there. This is a chronograph. We're looking at solar wind outflows. We're looking at the corona. It's 32 solar radii across. This is for the past 24 hours. And so Mercury being in the superior position on the other side of the sun shows up pretty brightly on the chronograph. And that's known as a cazimi. When they go conjunct, that's a cazimi, or you could call it a conjunction. But a conjunction with the sun in Hellenistic is known as a cazimi. But a superior conjunction. It just occurred, and that will now start to move forward, and Mercury will move into an evening star position alongside Venus before they both go retrograde. But this is also contributing to that energy that we're experiencing right now. So a lot of things at play at this moment in time, which you may have been feeling, may have been, kind of playing with, you could say. Yeah, this is a good time, I would say, if you have any of my spirituality, for example, which is the blue lotus flower, chamomile, mugwort, passion flower. If you have that spirituality, then I recommend you drink it. I had some last night. One reason why I was more connected to these energies. If you don't have any spirituality, then I recommend you go to my website, wildfreeorganic.com/store to pick some up. I can show you what it looks like really quick, because this stuff is really great. And I think really if more people had some spirituality and kind of awoke their spiritual body and opened up their third eye, I think the world would probably be a much better place. So this is on the website, wildfreeorganic.com. And it's a fantastic deal because most people sell blue lotus flower for like 20 bucks an ounce or something ridiculous like that. This is $33 and it has an entire ounce of blue lotus flower in it, or purple lotus flower. So this is really, really good stuff. Super high quality, all organic on wildfreeorganic.com. Now, the other thing I wanted to do with this live stream, which I thought would be interesting, is I wanted to do a I Ching to perhaps get some information as to what this entails, what this earth energy is all about. Because that's one way we could get some more information about this, is that we could do a simple divination. So let us do an I Ching and then we'll read it together. And we'll go back here to our earth energy while I flip the coins. And then we'll have to go back to the website to actually figure out which I Ching it is. But I have 3 silver dollars or half dollars here. What is this, 50 cents? Yeah, 3 half dollars. Unfortunately, they're not actually made of silver anymore because the United States government is cheap. They took us off all the good standards that we had. But regardless, got 3 big coins. And I Ching is just a method of Chinese divination. We're also going to, at the end of this video, we'll play the third eye chakra singing bowl just to do a bit of like coherency for our third eye. And we'll see what we get. Okay, we have a yang line. Yeah, 1 yang line. Oh, yeah, okay, the yang line. We do this 6 times. We basically measure heads and tails. We have another yang line. We have another yang line. 3 yang lines on the bottom. So that is representative of heaven, the trigram heaven. When you have 3 yang lines, you have heaven. We have another yang line. That's 4 in a row now. We have finally a yin line. Yin is in the equation. So when you get 3 yin lines in a row, that you have the trigram earth. So we only have 1 yin line right now. We have 4 yang. And we got 1 more to go. And it's another yin line. So 2 yin on top, 4 yang on the bottom, and no changing lines. If you have a changing line, it'll swap, and then you get kind of 2 answers to your question. And the question is, what is this about? Like, what does this mean? So let's find our trigram. Of all the methods, I think the I Ching might be the most spot on every time. Whoa, okay. This is what we got. There's also sirens going off in the background right now for me. Hexagram 34, the power of the great. This is thunder over heaven, which is very much representative of energy, right? Teas do not ship to the UK yet. So just FYI, just the United States for the teas, the spirituality, and others. So the judgment, the power of the great, perseverance furthers. The image, thunder in heaven above. The image of the power of the great. Thus a superior man does not tread upon paths that do not accord with established order. And we have no lines marked, 0 lines marked. So we can skip that and we can go to our comments. And the comments on this one are pretty good on this website. I really like this website. Comments on the hexagram. The great lines, that is the light, strong lines, the yang lines, are powerful. 4 lines have entered the hexagram from below and are about to ascend higher. The upper trigram is Qian, the arousing. The lower is Qian, the creative. Qian is strong. Qian produces movement. The union of movement and strength gives the meaning of the power of the great. The hexagram is linked with the second month, March to April. The judgment. The hexagram points to a time where inner worth mounts with great force and comes to power, but its strength has already passed beyond the median line. Hence there is a danger that one may rely entirely on one's own power and forget to ask what is right. There is danger to that. Being intent on movement, we may not wait for the right time. Therefore, the added statement that perseverance furthers. For that is truly great power which does not degenerate into mere force, but remains inwardly united with the fundamental principles of right and justice. We will understand this point, namely that greatness and justice must be indissolubly they must be united if we understand the true meaning of all that happens in heaven and on earth. The image, thunder, electrical energy, mounts upwards in the spring. The direction of this movement is in harmony with that of the movement of heaven. It is therefore a movement in accord with heaven, producing great power. However, true greatness depends on being in harmony with what is right. Therefore, in times of great power, the superior man avoids doing anything that is not in harmony with the established order. So this makes me think of resonance, about how when you have energy, if it's resonating in coherence with a larger energy system, it just naturally becomes part of that system. That is resonance. That's what the Schumann resonances are. They're naturally resonant with the earth, and therefore they form and exist. And we have like resonance amplification occur at times on this planet. But clearly, if we go back to let's go back to this, because we have our trigram. If we go back to here, there was some sort of amplification of these energies that just suddenly came out of nowhere, right? This big increase in the power. And there was, for some reason, some increase in order and coherency at these frequencies. And so this hexagram here, let me write it down. I think it was number 34. Let's go up. Yeah, number 34. I'm going to keep this for my own records. This is stating that there are some big, powerful things occurring. And it's also very much, thunder in heaven. That's very much reminding me of like Zeus, right? In Olympia, right? He's the thunder god, or Thor. Which is very much a natural order of things. And it's demonstrating that there are processes unfolding right now at time in these more etheric realms, perhaps like in the more plasma realms, right? That fourth state of matter which exists all around us. The universe is 99.9% plasma. Only 0.1% we think is, terrestrial like Earth. So we're the oddballs. There's some big things happening up top. And if you align yourself in coherence with that, with good intentions in your heart, and you have perseverance with that, then it's saying that great success and fortune will come your way. But you don't want to work against the power of the great. So there's clearly something at work here. It says, you know, the superior man or woman, right, does not tread upon paths that are not in accordance with established order. So, you know, go inwards to figure out what that connection is to source and just the greater order of things, right? And enter into resonance with that, and I think you will be fine. I think you will be fine. So we're seeing some very interesting energies, but at like just a more mundane geophysics level, right? Because we went more into a metaphysical dimension just now. At a more mundane geophysical level, this is often connected to very high magnitude earthquakes, these sort of signals. And they have a lead time of, in my experience looking at these and reporting on them, it's been less than a week each time. But they can also precede earthquakes for weeks. There's a lot of good research papers on signals like this where they observed them 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before. So that trigram pointed to March and April, but that's not, I wouldn't say that's the strongest evidence. Just something seems to be coming because of this. So just, I don't know what that means. It seems that that would be like an earthquake. That's the most obvious thing I could think of, but perhaps you could also have these sort of signals appear before something volcanic. I haven't seen that in my own study of this yet. And I haven't seen any research on that either. But that's possible. We can't rule it out because earthquakes and volcanism are very closely connected together. But I'd say this is more likely to be some sort of earth event, like an earthquake. But we don't know what this is. We don't know if it's coming up from the ground surface, whether it's an ionospheric disturbance, which is creating these energies, because we're measuring this at the surface of the ground, and we're measuring this in the atmosphere. And so if we had ground probes that measure those signals too, that would have been useful. But we just have this measurement coming out of Cumiana, Italy. And yeah, very, very, very bizarre. So that's the report for today. Quite unexpected, but I did have that kind of precognition to it, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the live stream. Now let us, before we sign off, I'm not going to do a Q&A today. So because I just did one yesterday, but let us do a quick third eye chakra meditation just to kind of bring some good clarity energy into this, right? Because the trigram, the hexagram that we did, number 34, the power of the great, said that, you know, if you work in accordance with the order of heaven, then everything will work out for you. You know, things are good. I think that bringing some clarity into our mental space and into our intuitive third eye zone will help us to see what that established order is right now. Where is that main river of source flowing? And to enter into that instead of trying to swim against the current. Okay, so yeah, let us get started. And I'm just going to turn my volume down really quick. This isn't too loud. Okay. Thank you, Patty. God bless. We pray for peace on this planet, for Gaia to undergo her energy ascension and to bring us along with her with grace and in love. We are ready for the changes. We are prepared for the power of the great, power of heaven, the natural order, coherence, and flow of source and energy in the universe. Together, with pure intentions in heart, we dive into that stream of source and swim with the current to arrive to a wonderful, beautiful destination. Don't know what these energies here 100% mean, right? I'm not ever claiming to be a prophet or to make 100% this is exactly going to guarantee predictions, but this is highly unusual, and we've seen now a few times about how this is connected to very powerful earthquakes. So just be on alert, be aware and conscious, and trust your own feelings, your intuition. So that is my message for tonight. I will keep you up to date on the story. This is breaking news, and I will be watching this very closely. I would also ask you, the subscribers, to make sure you check out this data, because I can't monitor it 24/7. A man needs to sleep. So if we see signals like this, make sure you save that data, because that can be very, very useful. There's no data repository for this. It's just what's on the screen at that moment in time is what you get. So you kind of have to get lucky sometimes with catching this. So yeah. And again, one more thanks to anyone who gave a super thanks during the live stream, especially to you, Peppermint Patty. I believe it is. Yeah, Peppermint Patty. Absolutely incredible. Your generosity does not go unnoticed by myself, by others, and by our our supreme God, Lord, source, consciousness. So many blessings to you, and blessings to everybody for being here. Thank you all so much. Again, I've been your host, Stefan Burns. I will keep you up to date with what is happening, and hope to get some rest. It's been a lot of energy over the past more than a week now, and this is what I kind of had a sense was going to happen, and sure enough it did. So I'm hoping for things to cool off, but keep in mind, full moon on the 12th, it's going to be square to Uranus, basically exactly. So we have some very powerful energies right now active, and it looks like that's going to ramp up all the way to the full moon. So we still have a few days of runway for that, and then also cool off period. So yeah. Lots of things happening right now. Do what you need to do to feel good and embodied and healthy, and just be very mindful of your own behavior and your mental space. And I would say just, work with grace as much as you can at this moment in time. So thank you all so much. God bless. I will see you all very, very soon. I wish you a wonderful rest of your Sunday evening or your Monday.